I was 36 when I landed on the moon. When Apollo was over, I was 37, and the thought occurred to me, I'm 37 years old, what am I going to do now with the rest of my life?
Apollo astronaut Charles Duke walked on the moon. But what he's just revealed about that mission has left even NASA fans stunned. For decades, Duke stayed quiet about what he saw up there. Until now.
I'm on the moon. I'm on the moon. And the excitement, the wonder, the thrill, the adventure of it all.
From strange lights on the lunar surface to experiences he still can't fully explain, his story sheds new light on one of humanity's greatest adventures. So buckle in, because this is what Apollo astronaut Charles Duke finally revealed about what he saw on the moon.
0, all engine running. It's one small step for man.
We did questions like that because the evidence is overwhelming that we went to the moon, as people just refuse to acknowledge it.
The youngest moonwalker. Something pretty incredible went down in April 1972, and it involved a 36-year-old named Charles Duke. At an age when most people are still figuring out their careers or saving up for a house, Duke was literally walking on the moon. He was born on October 3, 1935, in Charlotte, North Carolina. And from an early age, he was the kind of guy who liked challenges. After graduating from the U.S. Naval Academy in 1957, he joined the Air Force, where he became a skilled test pilot. Basically, the people who fly experimental planes to push them to their limits. That's the kind of job that gets NASA's attention, and by 1966, he was selected to join Astronaut Group 5, a batch of astronauts that would go on to shape the Apollo program. Fast forward a few years, and Duke became the lunar module pilot for Apollo 16, the fifth mission to land on the moon. His crewmates were Commander John Young, a veteran astronaut known for his calm under pressure, and Command Module pilot Ken Mattingly, who had famously been bumped from Apollo 13 because of a possible illness exposure. Together, they made a powerhouse team. What makes Duke stand out, even in the elite world of astronauts, is that he still holds the record as the youngest person ever to walk on the moon. He was 36 years and 201 days old when he set foot on the lunar surface on April 20, 1972. For comparison, Neil Armstrong was 38 when he took that one small step, and Buzz Aldrin was 39. And if you're picturing the experience, it wasn't all just slow-motion hopping and flag planting. Duke spent 3 days on the moon's Descartes highlands, exploring craters, collecting samples, and even driving the lunar rover. Basically the coolest off-road vehicle ever built. They brought back over 200 pounds of rocks and soil, which scientists still study today. Duke later said that the whole thing almost felt surreal. After years of intense training, which included endless simulations, geology field trips to places like Hawaii and New Mexico, and even rover driving practice on rough terrain, standing there on another world was both breathtaking and humbling. Leading up to Apollo 16, Duke was far from a rookie. He'd already played a major role in one of the biggest moments in human history, the Apollo 11 landing. As Capcom, that's short for Capsule Communicator, he was the only person in mission control who spoke directly to the astronauts on the moon. So when Neil Armstrong made his legendary "one small step" speech, it was Duke's calm Carolina voice that replied, "Tranquility Base, we copy you on the ground." Pretty wild to think he literally talked to the first humans on the moon. And then a few years later, he became one himself. For his own mission, it was all about exploring the Descartes highlands, a rugged, hilly region NASA thought might be volcanic. Spoiler, it wasn't. The rocks they collected turned out to be impact breccias, formed by ancient meteor strikes, which gave scientists a whole new understanding of the moon's violent history. Over the course of 3 moonwalks, he spent more than 20 hours on the lunar surface and covered around 16 miles in the lunar rover, collecting samples, setting up experiments, and occasionally stopping to take in the view. The family photo left on the moon. Now, something interesting happened when Duke was on the moon. During Apollo 16's third and final moonwalk on April 23, 1972, Duke left behind a family photo, a simple Polaroid-style picture of him, his wife Dorothy, and their 2 little boys, Charles and Thomas. On the back, Duke had written, "This is the family of astronaut Charlie Duke from planet Earth, who landed on the moon on April 20th, 1972. Why'd he do it? Because even though he was 240,000 miles away, he wanted his kids to feel like they were part of the adventure. The boys were only 5 and 7 at the time, and Duke thought that leaving their photo on the moon would be a small way of saying, "Hey, Dad's thinking of you up here." When Duke was training for the Apollo program, his life pretty much revolved around the job. Most of his training took place in Florida. Endless simulations, geology fieldwork, and time in spacecraft mock-ups. Meanwhile, his family was based in Houston, where NASA's main operations were. That meant long stretches apart. His sons were still little, and Duke has mentioned in interviews that they didn't get to see much of him during those years. Duke said, "So just to get the kids excited about what Dad was going to do, I said, 'Would y'all like to go to the moon with me? We can take a picture of the family, and so the whole family can go to the moon.'" He set the photo down on the gray lunar dust near the lunar module Orion, took a picture of it with his Hasselblad camera, and left it there. You can actually see the real photo. NASA's image AS16-1, 17-18841, showing it lying in the regolith, sealed in a clear plastic sleeve to protect it from the vacuum. It's one of the most touching artifacts ever left on another world. Of course, the moon isn't exactly a friendly environment for keepsakes. With no atmosphere, temperatures swing from scorching 250 degrees Fahrenheit in sunlight to freezing -200 degrees Fahrenheit in shadow. Add in constant bombardment from solar radiation and micrometeorites, and yeah, that photo's probably long faded by now. But symbolically, it's still there. A little piece of home, resting on the moon. Duke has talked about that moment in plenty of interviews. He said he wanted to get his family excited about the mission, to make them feel part of it. Dottie, who supported him through years of grueling training, later said it meant a lot to her too. And interestingly, Duke's time in space ended up changing him spiritually as well. After returning to Earth, he went through a period of soul-searching and became a committed Christian.
Where I would have stood at that point, I know I wasn't walking as a Christian. I was going to church. We faithful churchgoers, and since we got married, and
often saying the experience of seeing Earth from the moon made him realize how fragile and special life really is. And Duke's photo wasn't the only personal touch left behind on the moon. Over the course of the Apollo missions, astronauts left all kinds of mementos: mission patches, medals honoring fallen cosmonauts, miniature flags from around the world, and of course, Alan Shepard's famous golf balls from Apollo 14. Each one tells its own little story about the humans behind the helmets, the terrifying beauty of the moon. All right, let's talk about what the moon actually looked like to Charles Duke, because hearing it from someone who's been there is something else entirely. Commander John Young was the first to climb out. He moved carefully down the ladder, his bulky white suit gleaming against the dark horizon, and stepped onto the surface. His first words were pure John Young, calm, confident, and a little poetic. "There you are, mysterious and unknown Descartes. Highland Plains. Apollo 16 is going to change your image." He wasn't wrong. They were about to rewrite what scientists thought they knew about the moon's highlands. 2 minutes later, it was Duke's turn. He descended the ladder, paused for a heartbeat, then hopped off the final rung, his boots sinking slightly into the fine gray dust. "Fantastic," he radioed to Capcom Tony England in Houston. "Oh, that first foot on the lunar surface is super." You can almost hear the grin in his voice. Years of training, simulations, and dreams had all led to this one step. And now he was really there. The first order of business was to get their ride ready. The lunar roving vehicle. It was basically a battery-powered moon buggy, folded up like a piece of metal origami in the side of the lander. Unfolding it in 1/6 gravity wasn't easy, but they made it look smooth. Duke and Young carefully pulled out the chassis, locked the wheels into place, and ran quick checks on the systems. Against all odds, it worked perfectly. Well, almost perfectly. On the first test drive, Young noticed the rear steering wasn't responding, which could have been a major problem on that uneven terrain. But, in true Apollo fashion, it fixed itself later, likely due to thermal cycling in the electronics. They just shrugged and got back to work. While Young handled some equipment setup, Duke grabbed his Hasselblad camera and started shooting panoramic photos of the landing site. He captured sweeping views of the Descartes landscape, rolling hills, scattered boulders, and a massive 45-foot wide crater sitting just a few feet behind the lunar module. That crater was a lucky miss. The onboard computer had originally targeted them right on its edge. A few seconds difference, and Apollo 16 might have ended in disaster. Once the site was documented, they jumped straight into the science. Young set up the far ultraviolet camera and spectrograph in the shadow of the lunar module. The first time such an instrument had ever been used on another world. From that vantage point, it captured ultraviolet images of Earth, stars, and even the Milky Way. A view completely impossible from within our atmosphere. The photos it took helped scientists study how Earth's upper atmosphere scatters UV light, revealing details invisible to normal telescopes. Meanwhile, Duke installed the high-gain antenna and television camera on the rover, setting up the live feed so everyone back on Earth could watch their every move in real time. It was cutting-edge tech for 1972. Those grainy black and white images were beamed nearly 240,000 miles across space, through relay satellites to living rooms all over the world. From there, the two astronauts began their fieldwork in earnest. The moon might have looked desolate, but to Duke, it was a geologist's playground. Every crater, ridge, and rock told a story about the solar system's violent past. He'd trained for months with geologists on Earth, hiking through volcanic landscapes and deserts, learning how to read the terrain. Now, on the moon, he finally got to apply all of it. Later, Duke would describe those first moments on the lunar surface as surreal. "Beautiful, but strange," he said. The ground was covered in fine, powdery dust that clung to everything. Every step kicked up tiny gray clouds that floated lazily back down in slow motion. The sky wasn't blue or even dark navy. It was pitch black, even in broad daylight, with the Earth hanging above the horizon like a glowing jewel. For Charles Duke, one of the most unforgettable parts of Apollo 16 wasn't the liftoff or even setting foot on the moon. It was driving across it. In April 1972, Duke and his crewmate John Young climbed into NASA's lunar roving vehicle, basically a battery-powered space-age dune buggy, and took it for a spin across the rugged surface of the Cayley Plains. To this day, Duke describes the experience as surreal. No sound, no air, just the soft crunch of lunar dust under the wheels and the Earth hanging above them like a bright blue marble. Their mission was all business, though. They were there to explore the geology of the Descartes region, collecting rocks and soil samples that would later help scientists back on Earth piece together the moon's violent history. Still, it's hard not to imagine how incredible it must have felt, cruising around on a world where no human had ever set foot before. We drove down and up the side of what we called Stone Mountain, Duke recalled years later. It's about 300 feet above the valley floor. That drive wasn't easy. The terrain was steep, dusty, and uneven. But the rover handled it better than anyone expected. It let them cover way more ground than earlier Apollo missions, expanding how much science they could do in a single day. In later interviews, Duke described the Descartes Highlands as a hauntingly beautiful place, stark, silent, and completely alien. It was beautiful, he said, but not like an ocean or a sunset. More like standing on the edge of creation itself. The landscape stretched endlessly in every direction, gray and sharp, and glittering under an unfiltered sun. It wasn't just another world. It was a reminder of how small and fragile ours really is. Duke once said, "I was in awe of the beauty of the moon and the pristine nature of it." From where he stood, the landscape stretched out in soft gray hills, with mountains rising on the horizon to the north and south. Everything was bathed in sunlight, yet above it all, the sky was pitch black. No stars, no haze, nothing. He called it the most spectacularly beautiful desert you could ever imagine, unspoiled, untouched. But he also admitted there was something intense about it. The contrast between the pale gray surface and the pure black of space made everything look surreal, like standing in a dream where shadows have razor-sharp edges. Because there's no atmosphere to scatter light, Duke said the shadows were cut with a knife. The sunlight was blinding, yet a few steps into a crater and you were plunged into complete darkness. And while it might have looked peaceful, being there wasn't exactly easy. The lunar suit made it hard to move, and even harder to see your feet. And the moon dust, that fine gray powder, got everywhere. Duke once compared it to talcum powder mixed with tiny glass shards. It clung to everything, scratched visors, and even smelled like burnt gunpowder when they brought it back into the cabin. In another reflection, Duke talked about how strange the moon really felt once they got there. The horizon looked unnaturally close, curving sharply in every direction, almost like being inside a giant gray bowl. There was no sense of distance the way there is on Earth, no haze or color to soften the edges, just rock, dust, and silence. He remembered how still it was. The only sounds coming from the soft hiss and hum of his life support system inside the suit. "You're just in wonder of it all," he said, "with the beauty of the lunar surface, the stark contrast between the gray of the moon and the blackness of space. The shadow that shouldn't have been there." Shifting over to one of the more memorable stops on Apollo 16's first moonwalk, Plum Crater. Duke and Young drove the lunar rover about 9/10 of a mile west from their landing site to get there. Plum was roughly 40 meters across and about 10 meters deep, sitting right on the rim of the larger Flag crater. From a geological standpoint, it was an exciting target, a place where they could dig into fresh material thrown out by impacts and get a peek beneath the moon's surface layers. Standing on the rim, Duke later said it was both fascinating and tricky. The lighting played serious games with their depth perception. On the moon, there's no atmosphere to scatter sunlight, so shadows are brutally sharp, blacker than anything you'd ever see on Earth. The shadows were very deep, he explained, and you couldn't tell how far things were. Even small rocks could look like boulders from a few feet away. At Plum, the crater's east wall cast long, knife-edged shadows, and the bottom was swallowed in darkness. It wasn't mysterious or eerie, just a reminder of how alien the lunar environment really is. NASA's mission records show it was a straightforward geological stop, where Duke and Young collected regolith and rock samples for analysis back on Earth. Later reviews of mission footage confirmed what they saw. No strange shapes or movement, just the normal play of light and shadow across the crater's edge. Duke didn't mention anything unusual in his reports to Mission Control. For him, Plum was all about the science, documenting the rocks, chipping samples, and helping researchers understand the composition of the highlands. But those shadows definitely gave the place an eerie vibe. Duke often mentioned how the light on the moon was unlike anything on Earth, so harsh that the bright spots almost blinded you, while the shadows swallowed up every detail. Without an atmosphere to soften or scatter sunlight, everything looked razor sharp, like a black and white photograph with no grays in between. You can actually see what he meant in photos like NASA's AS16-109-17804, which shows Duke standing right at the rim of Plum Crater. The contrast is extreme. Blindingly bright dust against pitch-black shadows. There's nothing mysterious about it, though. No strange movements or unexplained shapes, just the moon doing what it does best, looking dramatic and alien. Audio dropouts. During EVA, during Duke's moonwalks, communication with Houston was crucial. Every sample collected, every movement of the rover, and every status check ran through mission control. But, like any mission from that era, the audio wasn't always flawless. Apollo 16's mission logs show plenty of clear, steady chatter, but also the occasional hiccup. During the second EVA on April 22nd, which lasted 7 hours and 23 minutes, there were short pauses in the transmission, a few seconds here and there, mostly caused by signal dropouts, static, or the astronauts' suit antennas shifting as they worked. These moments were completely normal for 1970s space communication. The round-trip delay between Earth and the Moon was about 2 to 3 seconds, and with all the moving parts, relay stations, spacecraft equipment, and the astronauts themselves, brief gaps were expected. NASA transcripts even show a few longer, quiet stretches, like during the close-out phase of EVA-2, where Duke and Young were wrapping up tasks near the rover. Some of those clips run 10 to 15 minutes with natural breaks, mostly while they were focused on collecting samples or repositioning equipment. Researchers who've reviewed the full-voice transcripts haven't found anything out of the ordinary. No unexplained silences or missing dialogue beyond what you'd expect from radio interference or technical limitations. Everything's documented in the public NASA archives, showing Duke and Young chatting about geology, rover navigation, and instrument checks. Duke himself has never described the comms as mysterious or problematic, just part of the job. For the technology of the time, the communication system worked remarkably well, allowing near real-time coordination with Houston from nearly 250,000 miles away. Moon Olympics mishap. Now here's one of the more fun and slightly terrifying moments from Apollo 16. To tie in with the 1972 Munich Olympics, John Young and Charlie Duke decided to hold their own little Lunar Olympics during their third and final moonwalk. After days of serious science, they figured a bit of levity wouldn't hurt, so Duke went for it, a lunar high jump. In 1/6 gravity, he managed to spring up about 4 feet off the surface. Not bad, right? But the landing wasn't exactly graceful. His bulky 360-pound Earth-weight spacesuit, which weighed about 60 pounds on the moon, threw off his balance and he toppled backward, landing hard on his life support backpack, the one piece of equipment keeping him alive. Commander John Young's quick response? A classic deadpan. That ain't very smart, Charlie. Duke later admitted it was the scariest moment of the entire mission. It was stupid, he said. If that backpack had broken, I'd be dead. The portable life support system was designed to take a beating. NASA had literally tested them with hammers. But still, falling flat on it on the moon wasn't exactly part of the training plan. Thankfully, the backpack held up, and Duke bounced back, literally. The Lunar Olympics wrapped up right there. They decided one event was plenty. There's even video and photos from the rover camera showing the stunt, including frame AS16-113-18339, which captures Duke mid-fall. he still jokingly calls himself the lunar high jump record holder. And technically, he's not wrong. Scientific contributions. Apollo 16 wasn't just about exploration or photo ops. It was real, groundbreaking science. By the time John Young and Charlie Duke lifted off from the lunar surface, they'd collected 209 pounds, about 95 kilograms, of rocks and soil from the moon's rugged highlands. Most of it was breccia, rock fragments fused together by ancient impacts, along with pieces of anorthosite, one of the oldest types of crustal rock on the moon. Those samples were game changers. Before Apollo 16, scientists thought the Descartes region might have been shaped by volcanic activity. But Duke and Young's findings proved otherwise. The terrain was created by massive meteor impacts billions of years ago. In other words, they helped rewrite what we thought we knew about how the moon's surface formed. The crew also deployed a suite of cutting-edge experiments, including the first far ultraviolet camera/spectrograph ever used on another world. From the moon's surface, it captured stunning images of Earth's atmosphere, the Milky Way, and distant stars. Things we simply couldn't see in the same way from down here. They also set up instruments like a portable magnetometer to measure magnetic fields, seismic sensors to detect moonquakes, and heat flow probes to study how the moon dissipates internal energy. All of this gear was part of the Apollo Lunar Surface Experiments Package, or ALSEP, which kept running for years after the mission ended, quietly sending data back to Earth. One highlight was the discovery of shadow rock, a boulder that had been shielded from sunlight for eons. Samples from it revealed how cosmic rays interacted with the lunar surface over time, giving scientists a unique glimpse into the moon's radiation history. And the work didn't stop there. Decades later, researchers are still learning from Apollo 16's haul. In 2024, new analyses of those same rocks provided fresh insights into how impacts shaped not only the moon, but the early Earth as well. Rebuttal to moon landing conspiracies. When it comes to moon landing conspiracies, Duke doesn't mince words. He's heard all the claims: the waving flag, the weird shadows, the studio set theories, and he's not having any of it. His go-to response? "Sir, I was there." In interviews, Duke's patiently broken down the myths. The flag looked like it was waving because of momentum, not wind. There's no air on the moon. Shadows? That's just uneven terrain and harsh lighting creating optical illusions. And then there's the evidence: 842 pounds of moon rocks brought back from 6 missions. The laser reflectors the astronauts left behind, still used today to measure the moon's distance from Earth, and independent tracking of every Apollo flight by countries around the world. He's polite but firm about it. We've got the evidence. And he's right, as both the Capcom who guided Apollo 11 to the surface and one of only 12 people who've actually walked on the moon. Duke speaks from first-hand experience. He often points out that it took roughly 400,000 people, scientists, engineers, pilots, and technicians to make the Apollo program happen. The idea that all of them could keep a massive secret for over 50 years? As Duke puts it, impossible. And that's Charles Duke's story. The youngest man to walk on the moon. The guy who took a family photo 240,000 miles away and called it a place of terrifying beauty. So, what do you think about Apollo 16 and Charles Duke's incredible journey? Drop a comment down below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive into the stories behind space exploration.